All right, today we're going to dive into a book you've probably never heard of, written by a queen whose literary genius was pretty much overshadowed by her royal title. This is the story of the Heptameron, a scandalous, brilliant masterpiece that tried to change the world by asking one simple but very dangerous question.
I mean, think about that for a second. Can a bunch of stories really challenge an empire? Can fiction actually shake the foundations of one of the most powerful institutions on Earth? Well, back in the 16th century, one woman dared to find out.
And that woman was Marguerite de Navarre. She was the sister of the King of France, a brilliant thinker, and an author who snuck a radical vision for the future of faith into a collection of dramatic, witty, and honestly, often shocking stories. To really get just how revolutionary her book was, we have to step into her world, a world that was right on the edge of some massive, profound change. So the 16th century was a period of incredible disruption. Old systems like feudalism were crumbling, power was getting centralized around kings, and the printing press, that was a total game changer, letting new ideas just spread like wildfire. And right in the middle of this storm, you have this movement called humanism, which pushed people to go back to the original texts, sparking a fundamental rethinking of pretty much everything. So what even is this book? Well, the setup is pretty straightforward. 10 nobles get trapped in an abbey because of a flood, and they decide to kill time by telling stories. But what starts out as just some light entertainment, it quickly turns into something way, way more dangerous.
Because hidden just beneath these entertaining tales was an absolutely devastating critique of the most powerful institution of her time, the Catholic Church. To really appreciate what Marguerite was doing, you gotta see the church the way she saw it. The whole institution was facing a crisis. Popes were acting more like kings than spiritual leaders. The clergy were often seen living in total luxury, completely out of touch with regular people. And all of this created a deep, deep hunger for a faith that felt more personal, more direct, and, less corrupt. And Marguerite does not pull any punches. In one of her stories, she describes a friar's private room, a supposedly holy place, as being just filthy with the leftovers of Bacchus, the god of wine, and Ceres, the goddess of grain. I mean, she's using pagan imagery to paint this picture of pure gluttony and debauchery, basically showing these men of God living a life of total excess. Her main strategy, and it was brilliant, was to create this stark contrast. The church preached piety and simplicity, but her stories were full of greed and hypocrisy. She was holding up a literary mirror, forcing the institution to look at the huge gap between what it said it was and what it had actually become. And this is the really crucial point. These weren't just wild, made-up fictions. She was pulling from real-world stories and the social problems of her time. The Heptameron was basically a literary exposé, and she was using storytelling as a weapon to attack some very real institutional rot. But here's the thing. Marguerite wasn't just interested in tearing things down. Underneath all that criticism, she was carefully building a radical new vision for the future of faith itself.
As a deeply committed Christian and a humanist, her goal was never to destroy the church. Not at all. She was what we'd call an evangelical reformer. Influenced by big thinkers like Erasmus. She truly believed the institution could be saved, but only if it got back to its core principles. Her vision for this new faith really rested on 3 revolutionary ideas. First, that every single person had the right to read and interpret the Bible for themselves without a priest telling them what it all means. Second, that the whole corrupt layer of clergy was just unnecessary. Jesus was the only real mediator you needed. And third, this core Protestant idea of sola gratia, that salvation comes from God's grace alone, not from doing rituals or paying the church. But beyond these theological points, which were already shaking Europe to its core, Marguerite did something even more audacious. She put this entire revolutionary vision into the mouth of a woman. And that woman is the character Oiselle. In the book, she's the moral and spiritual compass for the whole stranded group. She's the one who insists they start every single day by reading the scriptures directly. In a world where the clergy was 100% male, making a laywoman the chief theologian and spiritual guide, that was an absolutely incredible act of defiance. Oiselle is Marguerite's argument in human form. And this really gets to the heart of her lasting legacy, which is just a story of profound intellectual and personal courage. So this kind of begs the question, right? If she had all these deeply thought out theological ideas, why hide them in a collection of racy stories? Why not just write a straightforward philosophical book?
The answer is as simple as it is infuriating. She couldn't. The formal role of a theologian, the ability to write and publish a big, serious text on faith, that was a world completely closed to women. It didn't matter how brilliant or educated she was, her gender was an insurmountable barrier. So she used the literary form that was available to her, fiction, as a kind of backdoor into the theological conversation. And this bias didn't end in the 16th century. As the scholar Carol Feisel points out, even modern historians tend to focus on Marguerite's political role as the king's sister, while her really profound theological contributions have been almost totally ignored. She's been sidelined from the very field she fought so cleverly to get into. But make no mistake, she was an absolute theological heavyweight. She was in direct conversation with the greatest minds of her era. She corresponded with her spiritual advisor Guillaume Brissonet about a direct mystical faith. She soaked up the humanist ideals of Erasmus, and her work directly engages with the reformist ideas of Martin Luther. I mean, she was at the very center of the intellectual earthquake of her time. So what's the big takeaway from all this? The Heptameron is so much more than just a collection of old stories. It's a masterclass in using literature as a weapon for social and religious critique. It's a passionate argument for a personal, direct faith. And, most radically, it is a powerful claim for a woman's right to have a voice and real authority in the most important conversations of her society. It leaves us with a final thought that really echoes from her century all the way to ours. When the official structures of power become corrupt or exclusive, is it the storyteller, the artist, the writer, who holds the real power to challenge, to reform, and to imagine a different kind of world? Marguerite de Navarre certainly seemed to think so.